It's Monday, May 18th, 2026. The rarest of political events happened over the weekend. An honest assessment, I think, of Iran, and it'd be nice if certain Republicans would just stop talking for a little bit. Next on the AM Update. Oh, the rarest of rarities went down in Louisiana over the weekend as a Senate incumbent lost in a primary. That would be the Senate primary in the state of Louisiana. Bill Cassidy lost his primary. Not only did he lose, he came in third place. First time in nearly 15 years a sitting U.S. senator lost their primary in a non-special election. Bill Cassidy missing out on the runoff to John Fleming and Julia Letlow. Letlow is endorsed by President Trump. This is the rarest of rare events in politics. Of course, Bill Cassidy, despite having voted for some of Trump's nominees, if you read between the lines, he was one of the worst senators, and particularly with the Health and Human Services picks or those who are in that orbit, one of the worst, trying to muck things up behind the scenes, making demands out of people like RFK Jr. Again, if you believe the reports, and I find them rather believable. So even though officially on the surface his hands were always clean in support of President Trump's nominations, the dude was working against the people. Behind the scenes, working against the will of the people. Here is Bill Cassidy. He was one of the 7 Republicans during the second impeachment of President Trump, one of the 7 Republicans to vote to convict President Trump in the Senate. He was asked by Jason Chaffetz on Fox News, big weekend show over the weekend, if he would do anything different now that time has passed.
I'm incredibly proud of that.
Chairman Jason Chaffetz, you and I got to serve in the Congress for a little while, but my question for you is still about Donald Trump. I mean, knowing what you know now about the farce that was put forward to the American people and the Congress, knowing what you know now, would you still vote to actually convict Donald Trump of the charges that he was put up for?
Reporters always love to ask that question. I'm a doctor. You give me all the information I can, I make a decision, I move on. I don't keep on going back, oh, what happened 5 years ago? I'm thinking about what's going to happen 5 years from now.
Senator, with all due respect, you just talked about the stuff you've done for the last 5 years. You just touted everything you've done for the last 5 years. Why can't you answer that question? Did you or did you not?
Hey, Jason,
knowing what you know now,
Jason, if I
want you to answer that question. Would you or would you not actually vote to convict, knowing what you know now? It's a simple question.
Yeah, Jason, you may go back and flagellate yourself over decisions in the past. I do not.
Bill Cassidy, the now ousted senator from Louisiana, not even making the runoff in his GOP primary. So this says a couple of things. Number one, events like this can happen, and they shouldn't have 15 years apart. Shouldn't be every 15 years we'll get rid of one of these terrible rhinos, Republicans in the Senate. Shouldn't happen every 15 years. It should be like every year, every election cycle. That has to be a normalized thing. Getting involved in primaries has to be a normal part of being a citizen. It just has to be. And we can't just have 15 years apart. Hey, we finally ousted one of these incumbents with high name ID. No, it has to be more regular than this. Because this shows it actually can happen. You know what also this proves? This also proves that President Trump can actually get rid of some of these nasty incumbents when he wants to. Now, Julia Letlow, that is the person who came on top in the voting. Don't know much about her. I've heard, to the extent that I have heard anything about her, not super impressive. But the John Fleming dude as well. At a previous post, I think for treasurer, or some such thing in Louisiana, he actually got Trump's endorsement. I've heard better things about him. Who knows who will win that runoff between Letlow and Fleming? But President Trump, when he feels like it and puts his finger on the scale, he can actually knock off some of these just terrible incumbents in Congress. So there is that. Moving on. In the aftermath of President Trump's trip to China, Bret Baier asked the president whether he has any regrets about his phrasing when asked whether he cares about Americans' financial situations when it comes to the Iran war. Bret Baier asking President Trump to clarify. President Trump does not.
Numbers are. You can imagine Democrats and political pundits jumped all over this statement that you made the other day. You were asked when you were leaving.
What extent are American financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even
a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
That's right. That's a perfect statement. I'd make it again.
But you can imagine how many people stop the soundbite I don't think about America's financial situation. So what's your response to that framework?
It's very simple. When people hear me say it, everybody agrees. Short-term pain. It's going to be short-term pain. But the pain is much less than people thought. Because
numbers.
So there's President Trump saying he doesn't think about Americans' financial situations. All he thinks about is Iran not being able to have a nuclear weapon, saying, quote, "That's a perfect statement. I'd make it again." That's 200 proof President Trump right there. I get it. I understand. You're not going to answer that question. Oh, yeah, the Americans' financial situation might just make me fold when trying to negotiate with the Iranians. You're not going to telegraph that sort of weakness, any sort of weakness to the Iranians. Yet at the same time, of course, armchair quarterbacking this, President Trump, actually, I think towards the end there did a little bit better job of messaging. It's short-term pain, long-term gain, and I think the American people understand this. So where are things with Iran? How does this lie? I saw this post over the weekend from somebody named Miad Maleki, senior fellow at FDD, that's a national security think tank. And he has several sources here, kind of getting the picture of what's happening in Iran. Iran International, which I have found is rather dependable for news inside Iran. Also Vortexa, which is an energy futures market analyzing group. Those are just a couple of the sources he cites here. So this is a post I want to read for you. It's an assessment of Iran, because we really haven't had a fair, neutral, objective analysis on where things stand with that country from inside that country for really weeks now. So I don't know how accurate this is. This individual seems to be a but he seems to be a legitimate individual. He cites his sources as well. So I just want to present this to you. You can make up your own mind. This is from Miad Maleki, a national security analyst for FDD. The internal Iranian regime narrative has shifted markedly in the past 72 hours. Multiple officials have now openly acknowledged Iran's structural gasoline deficit, war-damaged energy infrastructure, and the urgent need for consumption management. That means rationing. Fuel shortages and tightened rationing are pushing drivers across the country into a rapidly growing gasoline black market. Citizens in Iran are describing hours-long lines at filling stations and sharply inflated under-the-table prices. A clear signal that the official quota system is breaking down on the ground. That's a report from Iran International. On the export front, the picture is just as stark. Iranian crude exports have collapsed by more than 80% between mid-March and late April, measured against a March baseline of 23.4 million barrels. That's from the energy futures analyzing group Vortexa. And there's no easy workaround, this post concludes. Iran's overland export alternatives via Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Uzbekistan have a combined capacity of 250,000 to 300 barrels per day. The math just simply does not work for Tehran. The cumulative picture, a regime now publicly conceding what it long denied, a domestic fuel market under acute stress and an export channel with no viable replacement. Again, that is a post over the weekend from Miad Maleki, national security analyst for FDD. It's interesting, citing his sources there. It certainly seems as if we are beginning to see some cracks, not only from within Iranian leadership. I think those have been obvious now for weeks, but inside how the country actually functions at large. If they're not able to actually import anything, they're not able to export pretty much anything either. Who knows how many weeks they have left that they'll be able to tread water, no pun intended. Back at home, kind of. House Speaker Mike Johnson, it'd be nice maybe if he if he ran some of his statements through comms people. Here he is discussing the Strait of Hormuz and whether or not the American people care.
So CBS News had some polling out this morning showing 76% of people are concerned. 67 say they are stressed about their own personal financial situation. You know that generally the incumbent is punished in the midterms, and people are feeling very uncertain about how they're doing personally. How do you campaign against that?
Well, this relates to the last segment. We were talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Really, all points lead back to that. Gas prices are too high because of that, and then that has an effect on how goods are transported to the grocery store and all the rest. So as soon as we get that straightened out, we will get back to the kitchen table issues.
Oh. As soon as we get this Strait of Hormuz thing straightened out, we'll get back to the kitchen table issues. It is May pushing June of the midterms. That's not a winning message. I don't know how many people need to hear that. Yeah, as soon as we get this thing figured out, 3,000, 4,000 miles away, we'll get back to the American people's concerns. Again, I understand what he said there is accurate. It does, and he's being honest there. What's happening 3,000, 4,000 miles away does impact Americans, and he's being honest with that. He's laying that out. At the same time, the messaging, the choice of words, not exactly great for sound bites. Because he could say something like, hey, the Strait of Hormuz is a kitchen table issue, and we're working on it. That's the message there. Also, the topic of giving Congress a raise has been broached. The topic of insider trading or Congress members actually being able to trade stocks has been broached. House Speaker Mike Johnson made this statement along those two topics, those two points of interest recently as well.
Well, look, the salary of Congress has been frozen since 2009. When you adjust for inflation, a member of Congress today is making 31% less than they made in that year. It goes down every year. And over time, if you stay on this trajectory, you're going to have less qualified people who are willing to make the extreme sacrifice to run for Congress. I mean, it's just people just make a reasonable decision as a family on whether or not they can come and move to Washington, have a residence here, residence at home, and do all the things that are required. So the counter argument is, and I have some sympathy, look, at least let them engage in some stock trading so that they can continue to take care of their family.
Again, there are minutia and complications to this issue. It's really freaking expensive to live in Washington, D.C. That level of salary just doesn't cut it to live there. It doesn't. I believe that. I have some sympathy for that. Dan Crenshaw as kind of pathetic, at least as a messenger, at least as a legislator, as he has been on certain issues. Just kind of a turd in the punch bowl on other issues. I'm sympathetic to what he has said as well. If you want capable people to come and do this, you got to give them a little bit more of a raise so that they're not doing this not doing this as some sort of a donation of their money, because they could be making a lot more money doing other things. That's not exactly the vision of, being a citizen and making a sacrifice for your country. That's part of being a congressperson. Is making that sacrifice on behalf of your country. It's not forever. It shouldn't be forever. But do you have the capabilities? Do you have the know-how to be a leader in industry, a leader in this, a leader in that? But you're willing to sacrifice that, put that on hold for a time to serve your country. That should be the impetus. At the same time, you don't want to dissuade maybe capable people from serving because it's too much of a sacrifice. I understand that. And I think Mike Johnson's argument there, hey, if you're not going to give members of Congress a raise, and there are other fringe benefits that they get as well. They get stipend, they get meal checks, they get stipends for housing as well. They get really nice health care too, health insurance, I should say. If you're not going to give them a raise, at least let them trade stocks. Sure. Great topic to talk about in January after a successful midterms, not in May pushing June of a midterm election year. Just stop talking, please. When we come back, a little conversation about AI, also DINKs, and some talking point that just went poof over the last few years. I'm sure you've noticed this. That's coming up next. A message from Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass.
I'm Karen Bass, and I'm running on my accomplishments.
Los Angeles on fire. Mayor nowhere to be found.
We were so prepared for wildfires. I didn't even have to be in the country when the town burned. I've addressed the homeless problem. Now, most of them won't stab you as long as you don't make eye contact. Our climate change policy is so strong, we've brought down energy use in the Palisades by 99%. Almost none of the needles in children's playgrounds have AIDS on them. If you like the last 4 years, you're going to love the next 4. Vote Bass.
That is the latest from Spencer Pratt, Republican candidate for LA mayor, featuring an AI depiction of Karen Bass touting her so-called accomplishments. My favorite one there was my green energy policies have been so effective, we brought down energy use in the Palisades by 99%. Yeah, because 99% of the Palisades burned down. Now, along those same lines, though, that is an AI generation. For those of you watching on YouTube, I put that up on the screen for you. That is an AI generation. And yes, she is touting some green energy hippy-dippy. Have you noticed, though, the confluence or maybe the divergence of those two topics? Green policy, the green agenda, and AI. Here's NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang recently talking about the needs that AI will have on energy infrastructure in the coming years. Listen to this.
I've been over the last half decade helping people understand the amount of compute that's likely to be coming. And I just told you guys something about how I reasoned through how much energy is going to be necessary. The amount of energy that we need for computing is likely probably 1,000 times more than we currently have. And that's an enormous amount of energy. However, the way to think about that is in the future, computers are going to be two things. It's always going to be generated because it's intelligent, it's contextually aware. So it's going to be generated. And then number two is going to be continuous. And so you've this generative computing in a continuous way compared to pre-recorded retrieval-based computing that is only initiated on, per use. The question is, how do you think about the amount of energy necessary for that? So I think if you say we need it 1,000 times, I wouldn't be surprised if we're off by a couple of orders of magnitude. And so we need a lot more compute. We need a lot more energy. And so you got to go and explain this to people. And so you got to explain it to people in a way that's kind of common sense and they can observe it. And there are, indicators along the way that in fact this is happening. And notice just as I was breaking it down for you guys, I'm reasoning about it for you so it's common sense to you.
NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, one of the most, if not the most valuable company on the face of the planet right now, talking about how we need 1,000 times more power to power AI computers and compute processes. 1,000 times. And I might be orders of magnitude off on that. A talking point, at least from Silicon Valley, that went poof over the last few years, poof to the point that we kind of have whiplash now. Green energy. It's just gone. It's like a distant memory because we need more power, probably running on so-called fossil fuels, old fuels, lots of them. We need more power for more computational power. The talking point about going green, building green, just gone. It's just gone. Whiplash. And yes, I bemoaned cronyism on Friday's episode with some of these data centers that are being built and getting sweetheart deals from local governments. Like the Kevin O'Leary massive data center in Utah, from what I understand, they're building their own power infrastructure. So it's not ideally, not necessarily, as long as you get the supply of the fuel, built up, shouldn't really increase utility costs. It's crazy, though. These talking points about green this, green that, just gone in the age of AI. Let's go to this finally. This video went viral over the weekend. It's of a DINK couple Of course, DINK is acronym for double income, no kids. DINK. It's this young couple, a married couple, who have a stack of colorful books, kind of like a gradient, going from red to white to blue to yellow, orange. And each of these books is a picture book that they have created. Elegantly so, all the same size book. And they've stacked up these books on their shelf. And here's some of the books' titles. They've made all these books: Morocco, Portugal, Italy, Vietnam, Africa, Saudi Arabia, Bali, Spain, Thailand, Nepal, Norway, Philippine Islands, Cabo, Croatia, Lapland, Thailand, and more. Aspen, Switzerland, Japan, just like 30 or 40 different countries. And these are all picture books of just this couple and their travels all around the world. I mean, just a ridiculous number of places that they've been. This is a DINK couple, double income, no kids. So they have this extra disposable income, and what they choose to do with that is go traveling together, 30 or 40 countries strong. If there's one thing that I wish Bella and I could have done more of before we started having kids, it is traveling. However, once we started having kids, I don't have any regrets, though, if that makes sense at all. I wish we could have gone more places together before we started having kids. I wouldn't trade going to Thailand, Santorini, Singapore, Caribbean, Istanbul. I wouldn't trade any of that. Not that we could have afforded that, but I wouldn't have traded any of that for having Ben and Abby at all. You have to wonder, there's nothing wrong about enjoying life as just a couple. Nothing at all. In fact, that's in some circumstances healthy, but it seems like this couple, and I think that's kind of where some of the discourse has gone. This is what they believe their prime directive in life is, just to travel for travel's sake. And they've documented all of this in probably 30 or 40 of these books that they've spent how much money on in addition to the travel. All of their time, all of their wealth, just for these picture books to fill up. And to do what with? In 20 years, who's going to be looking at those picture books? In 30 years, who's going to look at those picture books? It looks nice and cool on a shelf now. But when that couple turns off the lights at night, they go and sleep, those books don't wake them up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. They're just sitting there on the shelf. If this couple's motivation really just is, I'm just living to live, I'm just living for pleasure, for travel. My husband isn't really my husband is my travel buddy. My wife isn't really my wife. She's just the double part of the double income. If that's really what their worldview is, this kind of seems like hell, actually. Your trip to Miami isn't going to say mama to you. Your trip to Cabo isn't going to come up to you with arms outstretched and said, pick me up, hold me, I want to hold you. Never going to do that. These picture books are just going to sit on your shelf as you become more and more dissatisfied, ironically, with life. Because you can take 100 trips around 100 cities and 100 locations, picturesque though they may be, around the world, that's never going to fill your heart. I think this couple is trying to find God and travel and being young and youth. Those things will fade really fast. And yes, the music that they set this little video to, a 14-second video, sounds happy. Be my baby. You know, that's romantic. But they're looking for something that those trips are not going to fill. They'll never fill. might I suggest, if you have enough money to go to like 40 different exotic locations around the globe, I kind of think you're probably going to have enough money to have a kid or 4. And I guarantee you that's going to be a lot more fulfilling than the next trip to fill in the blank. That's going to do it for Monday. Hope you have a good one. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.